Hey guys, we're back. In the previous video in this video series here on the 3.6 GM motor, I was going through the torquing the heads down. And if you look at the video before this, I believe it's part 8. I was showing the torque sequence and how they're kind of going from a inner to outer kind of pattern, inside to outside. I mentioned in that video, when I should have listened to my experience, when I said I didn't like the fact that they were jumping straight from 22 foot-pounds right to the 150 degrees. I thought that was too big of a step in one jump. Well, it turns out I was right. So I should have listened to my inner voice on that one, because what happened is I did it off camera. It's funny, I did them all 22 foot-pounds, and then I think on camera, and then I did number 1, 150 degrees. I did number 2, 150 degrees. And then when I got to number 3, guess what? It was completely loose. It was like hand loose. Like, so, meaning if you just blindly followed that 150 degrees on number 3, would have essentially meant nothing. So I think what happened is, well, I know what happened is number 1 and 2 crushed the gasket in that area. So my thinking is that maybe the factory gaskets, I don't think they have as much as a pronounced raised portion as the Felpro. I used Felpro. So the Felpro ones have these, kind of stamped in raised portions in the metal that of course are designed to crush, So maybe if you just blindly follow this and you have GM gaskets, maybe that would never happen. I'm not sure. But what I'm getting at is I want to put this out there if I do another one of these engines, because nowadays all engines are different, by the way. There's really no cookie cutter way. But if I had to do it again, I would go, I would do the 22 foot-pounds on all of them, and then I would split this number in half, right? So 75 degrees more on all of them, and then another 75 degrees on all of them, I think would have been much, much better. But in case you find yourself in the same situation, because when you just look all over online, you can easily find this number. It says 22 foot-pounds plus 150 degrees. But if it becomes messed up on you as mine did, so now I was in a situation where you really don't want to back off anything. They're single-use bolts, they're single-use gaskets. So what I ended up doing, I just took this one again to 22 foot-pounds, and I was a little nervous of doing this. Remember, you got aluminum threads down there in that block, and if something goes horribly wrong, you could strip them. So I went, since this was just about hand loose now, I went back to 22 foot-pounds, then the 150, and I went through the sequence, and everything seemed to kind of come back to normal, but I still wasn't satisfied with that. So what I did was I went around and I took, remember, I might not be exactly right on the years, but let's just say when cars were in heavy production, 1900s. So now we're, what are we, 120 years? So let's say for 100 years, torque values were just fine for head bolts. It's only in the last, maybe 20 years or so that engineers decided, oh, we gotta do this torque to yield business, So I went back old school and I just took my torque wrench, and I think I started at 40, and I actually went on the other head because that head went off without a hitch. For some reason it didn't do that, and I kept up in the torque wrench until I felt like one of the bolts was like just going to move. So I ended up at the number of 60 foot-pounds. So since I was pretty confident in that, I went over all these in sequence at 60 pounds. I checked the other head at 60 foot-pounds. So, because essentially they're looking for a uniformity, more than anything, really, So when this thing got all mixed up, the worst thing that could be is that they would be not uniformly tight. So just putting that out there in case you guys find yourself in the same situation. I think if you go by the 75 degrees and then another 75, that won't happen. So I had to be the test pilot on that one. So moving on. So then we got into the timing chains, and as you've probably seen in the series, I put the Cloys kit in. But I noticed right off the bat when I opened the kit that the two idler gears had different part numbers. Even though, by the way, when they're flipped around, they look almost identical. And the Cloys kit, I'm sorry, not the kit, but the video that they post online, it doesn't make any mention of it. So once I figured it out, the S930 is the one. I'm gonna go slow so I don't make everybody sick. The 130 is, it's upside down now, but that's the one. Well, if you're looking at it here, it's over here. It's actually the left bank. And I'm glad there's a reason to bring that up again, because remember, as I said, in case you're not watching all these videos, they always mean, as I see it, the memory trick that I use is if I could sit on the top of this transmission, or if it was in a normal car, you know, facing the conventional way, that is the right bank and that is the left bank. So you have to be very careful of that, because when you come around and you put any left and right components on that are very critical, for example, these are the new cam phasers, so that one's marked left, as you can see. The exhaust ones, by the way, are the same. They don't matter, but if you see the one on the left, when you're viewing it from this angle, is actually on the right, and vice versa over there. So just so you have an image of that. So the procedure, you know, I use the Cloys procedure that they say, as far as, I don't know if you read any of this business about stage 1 timing and stage 2. And I think all of those things are done so that none of the cams are under tension at any point in the process. And if any of you guys have ever done timing belts with engines with 4 overhead cams, you'll know what I mean. You need cam holding tools, and one of the cams tries to spring to the left or the right or whatever. So I think that's why GM did it that way. So it seemed very unintuitive, but it actually did work. I also bought these cheapy cam holding tools. I think I got them on Amazon pretty cheap. Now, they weren't actually necessary, but I will tell you, let me get over and get this one. They made me feel a little bit more confident that the cams were in the right spot, because they have you start out with the cam on this side. The left bank cam has this extra lobe for the running the high pressure fuel pump right here. So that was pretty obvious because it has a notch, because the only way it's going to get over there is get over that notch. So they have you start out with these 2 cams with the flat spots facing up, and then the right bank has this one with the 2 slots facing up. So that's where you start, and then when you go to stage 2, it actually turns this side, and that's when this one goes in, because you see how the slots are skewed a bit. So I mean, you could do it without them. They're not really, you know, I mean, I guess in case something happened, one thing that was nice is if, for example, when I was torquing these are, by the way, 43 foot-pounds, and they do give you a nice hex spot for a wrench, which a lot of cams don't. It's kind of nice they give you that. But if it were to slip or something, it's kind of nice to know that those holding tools, I think they were like $12. Kind of nice to know they were there, just so that you don't run a valve into a piston, you know. So that all worked out. I have you'll see on the video series, there's all kind of information. I have the torque values, I have all kinds of stuff, but I should mention, in case some of you guys are newer mechanics and stuff, that, you know, when you put these cam caps back on, it's extremely important that they are in the places that they're supposed to be. For example, this is cylinder, you know, like 2, 4, 6. So if you notice, this one says 2E. So that's on the exhaust side. That's the E exhaust. And this one over here will say 2I. And also notice that the arrows face the front of the engine, that little dented in arrow, and then so forth. So then you have your, let's see, 4I, 6I. And strangely, they named this one for the, where is it, for the fuel pump is 8 exhaust. So even though it's not an 8-cylinder, but I guess that's just how they did it. So the reason this is so important is that when the machinist manufactures this head, they put those cam caps in place and they torque them down to its spec. and then they line hone it. They use a honing tool to make sure that that journal is completely straight, you know, and parallel. If you were to put even one cam cap in the wrong position, that cam and those journals would eat themselves up in likely literally in minutes, in like 20 minutes at runtime. So I can't stress enough how important that is. Also, I did this off camera. I think I mentioned in one of the segments, all the slack adjusters that actually sit back down here on the other side of the rocker here. Every one of them, I submerged them completely in clean engine oil, and then you stick I used a paper clip right down the hole, and you could tell when it unlocks the little check ball, because then it'll pump up and down. And it's a good idea to pump those things up and down and submerged in oil, and you'll see air bubbles come out until they're completely full, and that will ensure that you know, they have some priming before this engine gets started. One last thing, because I didn't get to this yet, and I hope I have time to do a segment on that as well. Another funny thing about these engines is that they're saying, you know, I was considering just, you know, disconnect, like taking out the fuel pump relay and then just crank it for a while to get oil pressure. But the problem with that is that all these slack adjusters are not going to get oil pressure until that happens. So, you know, once your cover's on, for all you know, it could still jump time. So what they suggest doing is, nowadays they're kind of using any kind of a vessel to pre-pressurize it. I think this engine's oil pressure is only like 20 pounds, which is really low. But so I'm going to take, I've seen this, a lot of people do this online. I'm going to take this oil pressure sender out, and it's probably going to be an odd metric thread that you're not going to find anywhere. You're probably not going to find a fitting. So if that happens, I'm going to just figure out what thread pitch it is, and I'm going to take a bolt of that size, cut the head off, drill the center of the bowl out, and just basically make a fitting for it so I can clamp a hose to it. And then I'm going to use either a garden sprayer. One guy used he built it out of PVC so he could pressurize it with air. Like he built a PVC pipe vessel with caps on the ends, and also really any way that you can get pressurized oil into this port. And I think they had them squeeze in like 2 quarts of oil, fresh oil. So that way, you know, it's made its way to all the journals and everywhere it needs to go. But one last quick thought. I'm sorry, I know this one's getting a little long, but this may be the final video unless I encounter anything. These chain tensioners, I wasn't really pleased, like, especially like this is the actual one that went bad on this engine, the one that you'll see in previous videos that actually broke inside. And just on a hunch, I was bench testing these things, and I'm so glad that I did, because hang on, let's get one of these grenade pins. When they, oops, dropped it. Hang on. Remember, we're live here, so we're sort of live. Yeah, they have you pull these, you know, these pins, and it's supposed to, hang on a minute, see if I can do it on camera. You know, they come preloaded, and they have you pull the pin, and that's supposed to be it, right? Well, this particular tensioner, and I don't know if this is common, and it's funny how this is the one that's broken. When I did that on the bench, it never actually sprung out. The other ones did, ironically. And then I thought, well, maybe it's because it's dry, you know, so I pre-oiled them inside a little bit and all, just in case. But what I found is that when I did it on the bench, every time sorry guys, it's morning here. Every time I collapsed it completely first, picture this out of the engine, you know, I pushed it all the way down and then let it go, and then it kind of hit its stride where it's supposed to be kind of, you know, making its way out. So I was really nervous of this one because there was no way for me to really be completely sure that it was, you know, ever going to unlock. You can see it, the movement in it, right? So you know, you guys can analyze your tensioners all separately if you want, because maybe, you know, maybe for your kit, maybe this would be the stubborn one that doesn't want to unlock. But so I got up in there, you know, carefully without gouging anything, and I got a hold of the plunger, and I just make sure I collapsed it completely and then let it go. And I'm thinking that's going to me, that's going to assure me that it's going to release just like it did on the bench. But I said, I tried it like 4 times in a row, just pulling that pin, and it didn't really completely release. So I don't know if that's a Cloy's thing or what, but something you might want to really pay attention to, because I hate to see you do all this work and have that tensioner never come out. You know, then I don't need to tell you what's going to happen then. Otherwise, just on a quick note, this hopefully is elementary to most of you guys who have you know, done any of this kind of work. I put the new seals in the front cover. These smaller ones were very stubborn. They were really, really tight, so I had to, you know, you don't want to break this cover, so because it's aluminum, you know. So I put a really heavy towel down like that, because when there was really no, you know, it's such an oddly shaped cover, it was hard to get something to really back these things up when I knocked them out. So I had to get a screwdriver and a hammer, because there's barely anything to really get up in there. And of course, you know, you don't want to gouge the aluminum up. And finally get enough of the edge and move around a little bit to knock them through. But when I pounded them back in, I was able to, you know, turn this around, and I put it on the floor. And I had some, I put them away already, but I had some little chunks of 4x4 that I put on the floor, and I backed it up. So when I found the proper size socket, I oiled them a little bit, knocked them in. They hit a bottoming little ledge down there, so you can't put them in too deep accidentally. And the book does say, for whatever reason, when you want to put in your harmonic balancer in, they want this seal, you know, this part of the seal dry. Even though it may be intuitive for you to lube it, they want it dry. I don't know why, but it specifically says that. Maybe if you oiled it, it would just attract grit and make it wear out quicker. I'm not sure, but I'm going to have to go ahead and trust the GM engineers on that one. Okay, guys, that is pretty much it. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one other thing. I say that a lot, don't I? Hopefully you guys have enough time to watch this video. We're getting up to 18 minutes now. But when we got, you know, the Cloy's site made this job look so easy, and it really was not. When we did this chain on the right bank, which you're now seeing on the left-hand side, it was kind of, it really didn't just fall into place like they show. If you see where this, you see under here, hang on. Sorry about that. I got the tripod on there to keep me from getting down low enough. There is a little circle there. You go. Right under that, let's see, you see that gold link right there? And I made a little yellow mark below it. Well, that little, sorry about that, guys. That little circle, that opening is what they want that to line up with. You know, you just have to kind of visually make sure you're looking in the right spot. There you go. And we had it in place at one point, and it really wasn't right. But it depends. It kind of depends on, you know, how squared up. Hang on a second. Okay. It kind of depends on how squared up you are to that link. But hang on, Pop. I got a video going.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So, all I'm gonna leave you guys in closing with make sure that is all exactly right. All right, guys. Good luck with it. Catch you next time.